What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at SoFi Technologies, ticker symbol SOFI, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Monday, February 12th. Okay, guys, so SoFi stock here on Friday finished the day 0.62% upside, about 5 cents a share. Pretty flat after hours, maybe up a couple of pennies here, 1 penny or so. So listen here, let's take a look at this thing as we head into tomorrow, Monday, next trading day, okay? So listen, here on the 1 minute chart, we had this interesting, I just like to look at intraday movement here to see if there's any additional opportunity separate from the big picture. We had this interesting bounce setup. It got very sloppy here. It actually cleaned up into the close. Never a great entry, at least for me, on a stock like SoFi. It's a lower dollar stock, right? So that bid-ask spread has to be basically a penny wide. Any wider and it becomes kind of dangerous to scalp, at least in my opinion. But, of course, we're talking a completely different ball game than the bigger picture here. If you guys want to get my personal scalp setup alerts every single day, I'm alerting the actual setup ahead of time, okay, which I think is much more valuable. I've tried it all different kinds of ways, and alerting the actual setup that I'm looking at ahead of time, it seems to be much more effective and actually helpful for people to kind of get some insight, view things from my perspective. Take a look at that first link in the pinned comment. There are 4 membership options. You can also add on swing trade setup alerts, unusual options activity, which are human verified by me every single day, and even platinum one-on-one coaching. The price for all of those does go up over time, but you can get grandfathered in at the current rate, and then you will retain your price for as long as you retain your membership. So hope to see you join. But let's now move on to the 5 minute chart and move away from like intraday opportunity and actually more big picture stuff. Okay, so if we look at volume here, remember, we're always looking for volume changes that are very obvious that correlate with stock price movement. Okay, so for example, if you're a bull, you would want to see as much volume as possible on big upside moves and as little volume as possible on downside fades. The opposite is true if you're a bear. So looking here at SoFi from Friday's trading day, honestly, it's not unexpected to see this big volume off the open. We had this little opening pump and then fade. Yeah, we did get big volume on the pump candles and then much lower volume on the fade. I mean, listen, from a bullish perspective, I would prefer to see that than the other way around. But as far as, other data that we can pull here from the 5 minute, I think it would be a little bit of a force. So let's move on now to more day-to-day stuff. The self-fulfilling prophecy indicators, the things to look at where there's going to be a lot of decisions being made around those levels, and we want to be aware of those. So let's look at the 30-minute chart in particular here. That 50 period, that white line, is incredibly relevant. We're basically on top of that thing right now. So listen, come tomorrow, if I'm a bull, I'm looking at that line. I just want to hold that and stay above that line. Hold it as support. And if I'm a bear here, it gets pretty obvious. Break downside through that 50 period, open up a potential downside test of that 200 period on the 30 minute, which is currently about 4% away. Okay, understand the psychology of both sides, no matter which side you are on. Very important. Let's move on now to the 4-hour time frame, which is equally as relevant as of right now. You can see here that the 200 period is actually above the 50 period, and the 50 period is just right around $8 a share. So this is a really interesting lineup. If I'm a bull here, and we see a test of that 50 period, I really want to hold that 50 period because it's right around that $8 a share psychological level as well. Ideally see the 50 period hold as support and get a bounce up out of the hole heading up toward really that approximately 4.9% away 200 period moving average, which is ultimately where you're going to want to break as a bull in the coming days and weeks. But if you're a bear, listen, this 4-hour gets really simple. Break downside below the 50 period moving average down through $8 a share is ideally what you're looking for. If you're a bear here, just don't hold that as support. Okay, let's move on here now to likely the most important chart on most securities is going to be the daily. Why is it most important? Well, it's the most heavily watched. All right. In my opinion, all TA, it's just psychology and self-fulfilling prophecies. So we have to watch what everyone else is watching, right? And, believe me, that's not a bad thing. It's not really a net great thing. It's not a net negative. It's just the way it is. I mean, this entire channel is dedicated to charts. So the self-fulfilling prophecy approach, yes, that's what I believe. But But that's the only way that I would want it, right? Because it's real. You take indicators that are measuring real things that the majority of the world watches. They tend to make decisions around those levels. They tend to program algorithms, big dollar algorithms, to make decisions around those levels. They turn into self-fulfilling prophecies. They tend to work slightly more often than they don't. That's edge, okay? But as always, it's important to watch these levels and only take them as one factor at a time, okay? One factor of many, never trading just off of one level on one time frame. You want to watch a variety of time frames, which is what we're always doing in these videos here. So here on SoFi, on the daily, the 200-day moving average is currently at 796. The 50-day is currently at about 840. I mean, listen, if I'm a bull, two things. Downside test of the 200-day. First of all, I'd like to see us bounce above $8 a share. But if we test the 200-day, hold it as support. If we test the 50-day, break up through there. Ideally, break 850, really, here in the coming days. Retest the 50-day, claim it as support, and rip up out of that hole. Very simple. That's the bullish perspective. If I'm a bear, reject hard off the 50-day upon a test, ideally. Break downside through. What I really want to see is break downside through $8 a share and downside back below the 200-day moving average. That's going to be really, really encouraging to a lot of bears and very discouraging to a lot of bulls, which is what you want. You want your side to be encouraged and the opposite side, the enemy, so to speak, to be highly discouraged. Now, implied volatility here on SoFi currently, sitting in the low to mid range. Understand that if you bought options in the last, let's say like month and a half, 2 months, you've likely seen some IV crush. This is your culprit right here, okay? But as that comes lower, it not only shows a little more comfort in the stock at the current price level, because the options chain is quite literally pricing in a little bit less volatility, but it also opens up the opportunity for new options buyers to potentially experience some IV pump if they buy when IV is low and then it bounces back up toward equilibrium. That's a good thing, right? That's a benefit. You always want to put yourself in a favorable implied volatility position when you're taking an options position. It's a huge factor that oftentimes gets overlooked. Okay, so let's take a look at the options bias from Friday as we head into tomorrow. Good sample size. All right, on SoFi, we can't ask for millions of contracts a day. 195,000, that's a pretty good sample size. 141,000 of those were calls. About 53,000 of those were puts. So pretty heavy call bias here on the overall ratio. The short-term speculators, 0 to 20 delta, 39,000 almost calls, about 24,000 puts. Pretty heavy bullish bias still in the short term. And that mid to longer term, the 61 to 80 delta range, and those deep in the money, the 81 to 100 delta range, that is also leaning pretty heavily to the bullish side, okay? But remember, as the volumes get lower, the more of a grain of salt you have to take it with, because you could have one big trader come in and throw that off completely. As always, this is one factor out of many, even though it's leaning to the bullish side across the board. The options traders can always be wrong. So around here, number one is always manage your risk, always. Listen, if you guys like me covering SoFi here basically every single day, first of all, leave a comment. Let me know that you want me to continue doing that. And second of all, hope to see you subscribe to the channel. Our goal is 1,000 in the next 2 weeks, and I think we can get there with your help. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.